If for one reason or another there has been a lapse in time since you've had contact with or a relationship with your kid, and I'm not going to get into the reasons that it happened because in some situations it just gets to a point where it no longer matters how we got here, but how we can rectify the situation, right? So without even considering how you got to that place, if there's been a lapse in time and your relationship with your child has somehow been negatively impacted in some way, what can you do? So the good news is that more often than not, absent some type of extreme circumstances, even if you've made mistakes, even if you've had some missteps, even some very, very undesirable missteps, more often than not, repair is possible, and it may be possible for you to actually enter your child's life or reestablish your relationship with them, or just establish one with them if you haven't yet had the opportunity to have a relationship with them. So more often than not, I would say that the situation is fixable. The not so great news is that, as I'm sure that you probably already can anticipate or imagine, this may not be a super easy road to go down. It will take some time. It's not something that can just literally be fixed overnight. Even if you had a positive relationship with your child, if something happened and there has been a wedge between the two of you, it will take some time in order to repair that. So, realistic expectations is important here because a lot of times people think that, you know, taking a step to try to fix the problem or the situation is something that can happen like this. And more often than not, it's not something that can happen that quickly. So set your expectations realistically and understand it's going to take some time. Likewise, it's going to require some patience on your part, some patience on the other side's part, and some patience on your child's part. Patience on your part is going to be very important because, regardless again of how you got to this situation, it's going to take time and effort in order to repair it. So you're going to have to put yourself in a mindset of understanding that this may be a longer journey than you would like for it to be. It may take more effort and more work than you would like for it to be. Try to exude patience so that this won't be as difficult and daunting for you as it could potentially be. Finally, it is going to take intentionality on your part because there is a difficult situation and there is this gap or this, lapse in time in the relationship and the contact that you've had with your child. It is going to take intentional action on your part to try to undo it, whether you caused it or not, right? So you just have to remember and constantly tell yourself as you're going down this journey, this is something that I have to be intentional about everything that I'm doing, about the efforts that you're making, about the communication efforts that you're making, about following whatever steps are needed. All of that is going to have to be intentional. It's not like you can just say, okay, I want to see my kid again and just sit back and watch things happen. That's more than likely not going to be the way that things work, right? So, intentionality, time, and patience are the first keys that you need to understand in order to make this work. Oftentimes, parents come to me with this desire to rebuild their relationship with their child after a major blow up or some type of disconnect or even alienation by the other parent or worse. And while the relationship may have been great before this happened and they're your kids and you may not understand why things got to this point or how it could possibly have gotten to this point, the reality is it does happen. And the natural inclination as a parent is to assume or insist that things should just automatically go back to the way that they were, right? Like, I had this time where I missed out time with my child, but now we should just resume custody or visitation the way that it was. we had this disconnect where we had a blow up, we had a disagreement, but we've talked about it. So things should automatically be repaired, right? The unfortunate reality is that depending on what has happened during this extended period of time when you've been away from them, who they've been around, who's been surrounding them, the types of things that they've been telling them, the things that they've been doing, the things that they've been led to believe, all of those things can have a great impact on your relationship with your child and their perspective and the things that they are feeling. And it could require a lot of repair that, again, takes some time. So, how can you do it, right? Like, how can you really just figure out a way to fix this relationship that has somehow gotten to this point where you and your children are disconnected? The first step is going to be the reunification process. So, what exactly is reunification? The word reunification essentially means restoration, repair, right? So, we need to figure out the best way to repair this relationship and begin the reunification process. This is almost always centered in some type of therapy, whether it be therapy with the child and just their therapist individually, you having your own individual therapist, and also conjoint therapy, or what's oftentimes referred to as reunification therapy, where the therapist's focus is solely to try to bring the two of you back together and help facilitate that reconnection between you and your child. What that process looks like will be different depending on what therapist is selected, the types of methods that they use, what your child's relationship is with that therapist, and how they're able to establish a rapport with that therapist, and also whether the therapist is familiar with things such as alienation and other issues that may come up that have caused the wedge. So you have to one thing you have to consider is whether the therapist that is being appointed is one that's qualified. You want to make sure that you try to find someone who is qualified in reunification therapy specifically, so they'll know the types of things to look out for and the things to try to work into their therapeutic process to try to make the reunification as successful as possible. I've seen some really, really great reunification therapists take a situation that a lot of people would look at from the outside and think there is absolutely no way that this child and this parent are ever going to come together again. And whatever kind of magic they work in that therapy office has worked wonders. So just understanding that, allowing the process to happen and having a professional that is trained and knows how to facilitate this can even be possible and productive in situations where there have been extreme circumstances that have led to this disconnect between you and your child. Now, the next step will be visitation, right? A lot of times people want to step straight back into visiting with their child after there's been a long period of time or this long period of a disconnect between the two of them. It doesn't really work like that. So realistically, you want to make sure that you ease in after the repair is underway. Then you can start focusing on requesting and working towards resuming visitation. There's really not going to be a point in having visitation if the relationship is so disrupted and there's going to be constant rejection from your child. So you want to try to make sure that, if possible, you can get the therapy process underway before trying to resume your visitation, so that you have that additional layer and that neutral party and that facilitator to assist to make sure that your visitation can also be successful. And then once you've had some successful visits, then you ease into a step up plan or resuming custody and visitation in the way that you had experienced it before, or the way that you've hoped that it could always be, right? So it's a step-by-step process, and understanding that it is a process rather than thinking that it is magic that's going to happen like that can not only shift your perspective and put you more at ease, but it also can help you set goals for yourself that are realistic and give you something to work towards and to focus on, so that this whole process of repairing this detrimental relationship and bringing you and your child back together on the level that you've had it before, or that you've really, really hoped that it could be, will actually happen.